and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the one and only Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Glorious, no, I won't give in till I'm victorious, and I will defend. From far and wide and light years away, cast from the shadows and I light my way. You think you know me? I'm just a sexy boy. Oh, I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. Without further ado, from parts unknown, your host with the most, Nick. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of
All right, welcome to this week's edition of the Rock and Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Nick, once again. Want to thank everybody for joining me on this week's episode, and we got a huge guest, JTG, formerly of Cryme Tyme from the WWE. I went and sat down with him this past weekend as he was performing at the All Pro Wrestling show in the Bay Area. Had a terrific chat with JTG. Talked a little bit some of the changes that went on in developmental with OVW that when he was there and how WWE has changed. Some of the things, some classic stories, what he's up to now. Some great stuff. I really appreciate JTG joining me on the podcast this week. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. As I mentioned on social media this week, I got a little special treat for you. I've got 2 episodes coming at you this week. Today I'm dropping an episode with JTG. Tomorrow, a special bonus episode. You're going to get the big effing deal, Carl Fredericks. Also sat down with him this past weekend before his match at All Pro Wrestling. Both are phenomenal interviews. Couldn't wait to get both of them out to you. So I'm doing a 2-for this week. You're getting 2 for 1. So it's going to be some kick-ass wrestling talk right here on the Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Want to remind everybody to go check me out on all the social media platforms. Twitter at Rock and Nick's R&W Podcast is the Twitter handle. Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. The Instagram Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Go to the Gmail Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. All of those. Also make sure that you go get yourself the official Rock and Wrestling Podcast t-shirts over at prowrestlingtees.com/Rock and Wrestling Podcast store. Make sure you help me out. Go buy yourself a shirt. Much appreciated for all the support. Last week got some great response with Toy Called God, and now this week I look forward to everything with JTG and Carl Fredericks. Got a 2-fer. I got a big guest coming next week that I'm going to talk about at the end of today's show. I'm going to give you the interview here just in a few short minutes with JTG, and then in the backside we'll talk a little bit about the superstar shakeup that happened on WWE television this week on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live. Got some very interesting takes I want to get out to you about that. I think it ended up being a really good superstar shakeup. But first, as I'm recording this here on Wednesday morning at 11 a.m., some sad news to report as WWE Hall of Famer Bruno Sammartino passed away early this morning at the age of 82. Sad to hear about that. I don't have a lot of Bruno stories because Bruno was way before my time, as I am only 28 years old. Bruno was kind of the champion in the old WWF. He's the longest reigning WWE champion of all time in his combined reigns, and his one singular reign, which ran like 10 years. Couldn't imagine in today's era of pro wrestling that a champion was champion for 10 years. But just wanted to pass that news along. Condolences to all his family, everybody that knew Bruno. You know, he was the man that ran that territory in the territory days back in the 70s and into the early 80s. Bruno Sammartino was the man. So it's a little bit sad news for everybody that's a wrestling fan. I got to see Bruno in 2015, out at at WrestleMania weekend, he inducted his protege Larry Sabisco. So he came out, and for how old he was, almost 80, he was still sharp, very good on the mic and everything like that. So I was glad to see that they kind of mended. There were some issues between Bruno and the WWE for years. Glad those fences were mended, and he got into the Hall of Fame before he passed away. So it was good to see that. So sad news there. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, how many wrestlers, we've lost over these years. I mean, you think about the golden age of the 1980s. I mean, just think about, Roddy Piper, Dusty Rhodes, Macho Man Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior, just the list goes on and on. It's never good to see that. And, there's very few guys left of that golden age that are still alive, Hulk Hogan being one, Ted DiBiase, very, very few guys left of that era. So sad to see Bruno Sammartino, who was before that era. Like I said, I don't have many Bruno stories because I was, that was much, much before my time. But do yourself a favor, go to the WWE Network, check out the collection, check out any Bruno matches. I've seen a few of his matches. I would definitely recommend his match with Larry Sabisco at Shea Stadium in the late 70s is really good. He had some great matches with Pedro Morales and Superstar Billy Graham. He tagged with Andre the Giant a lot. So some good stuff there. It's available on the network. I would go check it out. Do yourself a favor. If you don't have the network as well, go onto YouTube and go search a Bruno Sammartino match, because the man is a legend. He's the definition of a living legend. What definition of a legend? And he will be sorely missed. But I just want to give you some takes here, what I got coming up here in the coming weeks here. We got some big guests in JTG on this episode, as well as we've got tomorrow with Carl Fredericks. Also, we have next week, I will mention the big guest, but at the end of the episode, another former guy that was with the WWE is going to be on here. Got another guy that used to be in NXT lined up, so really lining up some good stuff. Going to be trying to get some rock and rollers as WrestleMania season has come to a close. Busy time for all pro wrestling. We're going to try for all of pro wrestling all around, whether it's indie promotions or WWE, Impact, Lucha Underground, Ring of Honor. Going to try to get some rock and rollers on here to do a little rock and roll talk here in the coming weeks. We've been spending a lot of time talking about wrestling. Haven't had a chance yet to do many episodes about rock and roll and heavy metal, but we will definitely be doing that here in the coming months. Once again, I want to thank everybody for the support. Definitely go check out the Twitter, the Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, the YouTube channel, all of that. Going to be hopefully posting some more bonus content coming up here on the YouTube channel as we get more subscribers over there. So definitely go hit subscribe and make sure you hit that bell button so that you can see anytime a new video is uploaded, whether it be bonus content, whether it be the newest episode. Make sure you do that and help a brother out. As well, I want to give a shout out once again to It Lives, It Breathes for creating my own personal theme song on here. Definitely go check those guys out on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, the works with those guys. Those guys are a kick-ass heavy metal rock and roll band, so definitely go check that out. So once again, Twitter, Pro Wrestling Tees, go down on the link here on iTunes, give yourself a review, and I may just hook you up with a free t-shirt like I've done previously with some other listeners. And as well, make sure that you, if you don't have iTunes, you're listening on SoundCloud, you're listening on YouTube, spread the word, help a brother out. So, shortly coming up here, I'm going to give you the interview I sat down with JTG at All Pro Wrestling in the Bay Area. I must say, All Pro Wrestling is one of the finest independent, what you could say, independent wrestling companies out there. They do a tremendous job of bring big stars mixed with local talent. Got a chance and saw some great matches there. JTG had an awesome match. Carl Fredericks had a great match. The cage match, everything about it. Great stuff. If you're in the NorCal area, I highly recommend going out to All Pro Wrestling in the Bay Area and checking out any of the shows they do. Sometimes they run the Cow Palace, which is amazing for an independent company. So I would definitely go check it out. So coming up here in just a matter of moments, JTG. All right, I'm here with my guest, JTG. I guess I'll call you by your WWE.
What kind of intro is that, man? Come on, man. This is one half of Cryme Tyme. Yo, it's your boy JTG, a.k.a. the flyest man in sports entertainment. Holla at me.
There you go. That's what I like to hear. Yes. Oh, man, dude.
that takes me back to high school, man. You guys
Oh,
were
man, you're making me feel old.
well, dude, I grew up started watching in the Attitude Era, so
Okay.
you guys.
Like right at the edge of that. We came in like 2006, 2007. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember your vignettes. What, dude, they were hilarious. Those
Yeah,
vignettes.
that was all the brainchild of Shad and I.
Yeah,
we came up with those. We did those in OVW, and then we redid it for WWE, and all they did was added a little bit of quality, camera quality.
So one of the things I've always wondered is everyone knows now with like NXT being so big and it being like its own brand, how was OVW like compared as a developmental territory? Where you felt prepared enough when you went to the main roster out of OVW?
I'll be completely honest. I was not prepared, and that had nothing to do with OVW. Was that I was just shot up so quick. You know, there was different tiers in OVW. You know, there was the beginners class, the intermediate class, and then the advanced class, and then you had the contract class. And I went through every single tier. I started from the bottom, and then I paid to get into the contract class because the contract class was for privileged folks, and also for talent who were under contract, and also who Danny thought who he wanted on his television, who thought could get a contract. So I paid to get in that class, and I was there for a few months, and then all of a sudden, you know, I went from sitting on the sidelines, and then all of a sudden being on TV the next week, and the week after that being a OVW Tag Team Champion, and then a few months later I had a WWE contract.
So at that time, Danny Davis was running it?
Yeah, Danny Davis was running it. Al Snow was there. Paul Heyman put Shad and I together.
And so that's where you and Chad met. We're in OVW.
Yeah, we met in OVW. We were friends before that, but yeah, we met in OVW.
Because your two books, man, there's some stories in there about you and Shad. The one, is it true that you guys got heat because he did cornrows? Is that
not that he did cornrows? Is when he did his cornrows? Yeah, and it was the first book.
I think it's
the first book. Then when I read this book, yeah, because you know when you're in a tag team, there's no individual heat. There's tag team heat. Shad decided he needed to get his hair done for TV, and we were on the road, and our cornrows were looking a little rough. What I was gonna do was just put a do-rag on and wrestle with a do-rag on if we had to do TV. But Shad, no, he wanted it to look crisp, and he did it during a show, and yeah, we got heat for that.
So one of the questions I always had, because being a more mature high schooler and as I was growing up, I'm like, did WWE kind of pigeonhole you guys with your gimmick and being stereotyped? Like, these guys are gonna be thugs and they're gonna steal everything and they're gonna throw them to the crowd. Like, how did you guys like react? You were just like, hey, this is not a good opportunity, or is it like?
To be honest, that character, the Cryme Tyme characters, we came up with that. We even came up with the name. Like the vignettes you saw, we came up with those on our own, and the WWE liked it and they wanted it. You know, it's not like they came to us and said, we want you to do this. You know, we came up with the characters, and what WWE do is that they magnify you, to put you on a bigger platform so you could express, you know, your personality, your character, your talent. And we was given that opportunity, we was given that stage, and Shad and I, we, you know, turned the volume all the way up.
Oh yeah, because I remember, I think it was the Survivor Series when you were throwing all Alita's panties.
Yeah, well, they came up with that idea. They came up with that, and we just made it our own. We had fun with it.
Yeah, because you could tell you guys had a blast.
Yeah.
When you were out there. Were you guys ever, you know, not getting a tag team title run on the main roster? Was that kind of a?
Like when you at that time. Like
I felt that time tag teams in WWE was very weird because you had like you guys, Caden Murdoch,
yeah,
the Highlander. You had a weird batch of tag teams.
Yeah,
and I always thought you guys stood out because of your gimmick. And were head and shoulders. And I thought you should have had a title run. At some
like
point.
when you're in the business and you become professional, you're more concerned about being over with the audience.
Yeah.
That's earned. You know, they could just throw a title on you for whatever reason. You could be a transitional champion. You could be a champion. You could be a person that they need for that title to get over. Like usually when the title has lost a little prestige, they put it on somebody who like a top guy. But I was more concerned about being over with the audience, and the crowd loved us. So that, to me, we were like the people's champions, tag team champions.
Dude, the entrance music alone was great. And I'm not even a rap guy, but I was like, that's cool entrance music.
Yeah, so when I saw little white kids dancing to our music when we came out, like, yeah, we got something going here.
Yeah, I'm a white kid from the suburbs. I'm like, dude, this is my favorite tag team on the main roster right now. And I was like, they're like all rappers and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know anything about rap, but I was like, this is great. This is great.
To be honest, I don't know how to rap either. But we looked like we were straight out of a hip hop video.
So one of the other things too is because in your book you have a lot of stories and the politics. It's such a big company.
Yeah, I talked about that a lot in my second book, Dan. What I write this book too, How to Play the Game. It's that being backstage in the WWE is pretty much like a chessboard. You gotta know you gotta know who's who. You have to know their rank, and you have to know how to move back there. You know?
because there's some very if you just say the wrong thing to the wrong person.
Yeah, say the wrong thing. You can wear the wrong thing. I've seen guys get heat for wearing shades. And you just gotta know how to move and shake. Like, I was very naive. I thought I was gonna get over on my talent, my personality, how young I was, because I got into the business at a very young age. I was 21 on the road traveling the world, and I'm like, I got so much time in the world. I'm talented. Vince loves me. I don't need to kiss ass.
Yeah.
Wrong. You gotta kiss ass.
So speaking of getting into the business, how did you actually? Because I was I'm fascinated with how different guys get in, because it's so different. 1980s, it was like this.
Yeah.
How did you, especially being a young 21-year-old in WWE?
So I started right out of high school. Like, I made my mind up. Like, when I graduated, I was going to be a professional wrestler. Like, I didn't give myself a plan B. It's like, I think plan B is like a excuse. It's like, once you give yourself a back door, you might take that back door. So I didn't build no back door. It was only a front door, and I was going to the WWE. And I went to I trained in North Carolina, and I trained at, then I went from North Carolina, then I went to OVW. And OVW, I got there when I was 19, and from there, I got my contract. I was just a big wrestling fan. Both my parents were wrestling fans. Both my mother used to take me to Madison Square Garden every month religiously. I saw Hulk Hogan perform live, Ultimate Warrior, all my favorites. And then there was a moment in time, like when I went to go see The Rock perform. The event was over, but The Rock was still in the ring, entertaining everybody. Singing, doing sing-alongs, and just cutting promos and just entertaining the crowd. Like a half an hour after the show was done, I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do. I wanted to be an entertainer. I am an entertainer. I'm not just a wrestler. I'm an entertainer.
Well, yeah, because like I said, the vignette, it was so weird, especially at that time in the mid 2000s.
Yeah,
vignettes weren't a thing.
Yeah.
Like it was in the 80s. Like, these guys are going to debut. So I always thought it was extremely creative in that fact you guys had that. So along that, so you go into OVW, and obviously you guys got a championship run down there, and you move up to the main roster. Who were some of the guys you really learned a lot from once you got to that main roster?
Oh, and Shad and I, we latched on to we hang around with several guys. Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. We learned a lot from them. They took us under their wing. We also traveled with them. Umaga, rest in peace. We traveled with him. We had like a small little clique. Also, Armando Alejandro Estrada, because he was at the time was Umaga's manager. So we all just got a big van, got a big rental, and we all traveled together. And that was some great times, because I learned so much in the ring and outside the ring too.
Yeah, especially from a guy like Haas and Benjamin that are collegiate. So along those lines, who working in the ring as well, besides those guys, you
learned a lot in the ring with?
Yeah.
In the beginning, or just in general?
Just in general.
Oh, man. Jericho. I love working Jericho. Jericho, when you're working with him, he takes all the there's no ego with him in the ring. Like, hey, whatever you want to do, let's do it. I'm like, oh shit, I could do this? Yep, you could do it. And then what he does is he makes sense out of it, with his experience, and he just takes leave. Like, we could do this move, but this is how we're going to get into it. And you're learning, like, oh, sure, I could use this later down the line, maybe add something else or take away. But you learn so much, because he's not step by step. He's more emotional. When you're in the ring for so long, you learn how to, from what we're working with him, working off the crowd's emotion and just feeling it out there.
Just being able
Instead
to
of just calling everything in the back. Yeah.
Being able to call it on the fly more.
Yeah. Just feeling the crowd out. Yeah.
Awesome. So along those, obviously, a lot of people, I really enjoyed when Cryme Tyme broke up, that little singles run you had for a few years.
Yeah.
Why didn't you think maybe it panned out as well as you thought it was? And what was the initial reason for breaking Cryme Tyme?
Because the tag team division at that time was kind of like, it wasn't popping. That's how it wasn't popping at the time.
I find that weird because the tag teams are always so
up and down. Right now, it's doing pretty good.
Yeah,
there's some good tag teams. Yeah, like if we were there now, we'd love to work the Usos and New Day.
I'm saying Cryme Tyme and New Day alone. The promos.
Oh, the promos. Yeah, that's money right there.
Yeah. I'm gonna campaign for that. Get some signatures.
The reason why my singles career never took off, I shot some $1 million ideas out there, but it's playing the game.
Yeah.
I learned that the WWE is an elite fraternity. You have to go through the proper channels. I went straight to Vince. When I had a good idea, I went straight to Vince, and some people felt slighted, like, why didn't you come to me with this? Everybody wants to be responsible for something that's gonna be successful.
Yeah.
And if you cut those people out, it's like they're not gonna bat for you. You need everybody batting for you when you because especially TV time. Everybody's fighting for TV time. So you're going against you're going against a whole locker room.
Yeah.
So once you get everybody involved and everybody puts their piece in, and you take something and everybody feels involved with your character because they feel like this something's gonna be successful. You got everybody batting for you. Then there you go.
Because interesting since you worked for the company. I always thought when Vince did that Stone Cold podcast and Stone Cold mentioned somebody, like I think it was Cesaro he mentioned, he goes, well, you got to grab the brass ring. Did you feel they give you that opportunity, or if it's we want you to get over, you'll get over, or was it?
From my experience, I think they choose who they want to get over.
Yeah.
I've seen talent grab the brass ring, run with it, and then they say, "Come here, where you going with that? Bring that back right here. That's not for you right now."
Yeah, because I'm like I can think the Ryder, Zack Ryder.
Zack Ryder is a perfect example. He literally bust his ass, and it went nowhere. That was very discouraging to a lot of the boys in the back to see that, like, yo, this guy bust his ass. Maybe, there is hope.
Yeah.
And they just took all the hope away.
And
they gave him a little TV time, but it didn't. They jobbed him out.
Yeah. And then you think it's just based on that everybody wants to be involved, and that it's a multinational company now more than it's, hey, we're pro wrestling. And
Yeah, everybody wants to be involved with the success. You have to go through the proper channels. That's from my experience. Yeah.
So, all right. So you have 2 books out.
Dad, Would I Write This Book, and Dad, Would I Write This Book Too, How to Play the Game.
So what are some of the, obviously I mentioned one of the stories, what are some of your favorite stories that you, from the first book, is just hilarious. So what are some of your favorites out of there?
What are my favorite stories? Oh, there's so many. Oh, the Bray Wyatt stories. I like that one. Mr. Superhero, Bray Wyatt wanted to save a bunch of girls from an upside down car, and I watched enough Hollywood movies, that the car was smoking. I thought I saw some fluid leaking. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. Those 2 combinations right there, shit could blow up. And I was trying to stay far away from that car, but Bray was, good. Shout out to Bray Wyatt. He saved those girls, but I helped a little bit. I helped.
Videoed it. I'm gonna stand far away, man. I'm not messing with that. So now, obviously, you've been in the indies for a while.
Yeah.
How would you characterize the health of the business currently compared to when you started? The
indie scene is popping right now. I'm having a good time. The freedom, choosing who I want to work with. And just being able to travel the world. Like last week, I was in the Dominican Republic, getting paid to do what I love to do. That's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's.
And you said, what was the next question you asked me about the state of the
business? Just how is it so much different from when you started way back? 2000? What's that?
I think it's less. It's very lenient right now. Like when I was getting into the business, it was like they had like this. How would I put it?
Kind of like a code of honor.
They still have the code of honor, but it's not so much hazing.
Yeah.
Growing up, when I was getting into business, European tours, you was getting hazed, drinking. I think that the WWE did a big thing about the drugs, the pill addictions. There's none of that. That's good for them. I don't hear too many wrestlers, face down somewhere in a hotel. No The drugs and alcohol definitely
I've
came
definitely
down a lot.
seen that, the deaths and all that. This
Yeah.
younger generation, it's different. I mean, I
Yeah.
compare it to rock.
And they're much younger too. Like, you remember like, WWE? These guys were in their late mid 30s and 40s. Now you got guys. For Velveteen Dream is how old?
He's like
22?
He's younger than me.
Yeah, he's like 22. Yeah,
he's a very young,
great talent.
young
Yeah.
kid. So, who on the indies have you worked with that just blown your mind in the last few years?
Who did I work in the indies? Shoot, you asked me down on the spot. I can't think of any right now. None comes to a female talent, MJ Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
She's a great talent. I wish her the best in her career. I hope she gets signed one day. Who else? That's all I can think of right now. Yeah.
So what's Shad up to these days?
Shad is doing his Hollywood thing. You know, he's waiting for that big role. You know, to be a breakout star.
Is there, so would you, as you're out here on the indies and you're doing that, would you ever go, now that maybe the company is a little bit different, would you ever think about going back?
It depends. You know, it depends if it makes sense financially.
Yeah.
You know, when I was young, when I was 21, of course, you throw a contract in front of me, I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to sign. Where's the dotted line at? Now I'm more business savvy, more business smart. It's just going to be beneficial for me now and in the long run.
So the hazing that went on, did you guys experience some serious?
Oh, yeah, of course we did. And I put and there's a great story in my second book. Dan, when I write this book too, How to Play the Game. There's a great story about how Shad threw up all over the bus and got heat with all the veterans that were on the bus. And he did a good comeback at the end, a good ending to that. But yeah, it wasn't looking too good for Shad.
I know, 'cause I've heard the rumors on the dirt sheets is that JBL was one of the big hazers of the young guys. Was that?
Oh yeah, I would say that he was, but he didn't. He liked me.
Yeah.
You know, he looked out for me, put me to the side, and gave me some advice. You know, I can't speak for everybody else, but JBL was good to me.
Yeah, because I remember you guys did that whole angle where you beat up his limo.
Yeah. That was fun. That was one of our most memorable acts on TV.
How was it rubbing? I mean, with basically the biggest star, Cena, doing
Rubbing
that?
elbows with Cena. That was fun. You know, learned a lot with him, like little stuff. Main eventing with him. You know, I wish back then. You know, my head was so big. I was when I saw the paper, like when you go to the locker room, you see the card and it's written on a piece of paper. You know, you can see where you are, how much time you got, who's going over, and I see Cryme Tyme on top, JTG and Shad, like we're the main event. And I wish I would have took that paper and saved it, but my ego at the time was like, oh, there'll be many more times for me to main event. Nah, I don't need this one. Yeah.
You know, you're gonna have many more. I thought. I mean, you guys had such the characters for that tag team division in that era too. Because
we had fun, man. It was just we just had a lot. We were just Jason and Shad with the volume turned all the way up. They allowed us to be ourselves. They gave us a lot of creative freedom, and you could tell when they took away some of our freedom. You could tell that it wasn't like the segment or the thing wouldn't be so over.
Because you guys were right there in that kind of end of Attitude Era, then it was going PG.
Yeah, going PG.
And where you guys couldn't do as much.
Yeah, we couldn't do as much, but it was okay. We worked with what we had.
Yeah, and you still have the great segments and stuff. Like because I believe you guys worked with Big Show and Jericho.
Worked with Big Show and Jericho. I remember our first vignette was with Booker T. That was classic.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun doing that. You know, I thought we had heat with Booker T at first because he wasn't even making eye contact with us. I thought he was mad. But after the vignette, we shot it live. You know, we did a couple of rehearsals, and then we shot it live, and it came out great, and he shook our hands. I guess we earned his respect, and then after that, we've been cool Booker T after that.
So you said you went to Vince with a lot of your ideas. How, I hear the stories that it's intimidating, but his door is always open.
His door is always open. I wouldn't say I'm intimidated by Vince. I just don't go to him with any bullshit. Like, hey, did you see the Lakers game last night? It was like, I'm not that guy. Let's keep it business. You're my boss. If I have a good idea for you that could make you money and make me money, make both of us money, I'm going to come to you with that.
Yeah. So he's pretty approachable then, you would say?
I think so. He's very approachable, yeah.
Because I heard on Jericho, he was talking about you got to get it at the right moment.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, if he's on the phone, like there's many times where I had to wait till you stop texting. Yeah,
he's on the phone, or he said if he's just eating, that's a bad time.
Yeah, it's a horrible time. Oh man, yeah, you don't want to interrupt anybody while they're eating.
So who were some of those Cryme Tyme segments you mentioned? There was
you guys and WWE put the production behind it? Who were some of the agents that really helped? You know, because I mean, they have Arn Anderson back there. They have so much.
Arn Anderson, they were more in-ring.
I know, like the beginning of your tenure, what Bruce Pritchard might.
Bruce Pritchard helped. We worked a lot with him in the beginning of our career. I had a lot of fun with him. I remember us going to the nursing home. And he was there. He was very hands-on. Shout out to Bruce Pritchard, brother love. I had fun with Bruce Pritchard. We used to also play a lot of Sudoku.
Sudoku.
Yeah, Sudoku Wars. I remember that. But yeah, Bruce Pritchard. Who else? Who else helped us backstage with our segments? All I can think of us right now is Bruce Pritchard and Stephanie McMahon was also hands on a lot. When we moved over to SmackDown, I can't remember, but yeah, Stephanie. I remember Stephanie being involved a lot. Yeah.
So obviously you started with them, and they are teaching you to wrestle on TV. What's the big difference trying to wrestle on TV versus like a show tonight here?
Oh man, like when you do the live events, that's why I say you have more fun because you're working all four corners. Yeah, but when you're working TV, you have to look for that camera. You have to look for that red dot. Let's say you wanted to get a certain look, like a look over, like you're selling. You have to sell to that camera that's on, and then you have the hard cam. You have so much going on, and you just can't be focused on the people that's there in the arena. There's also millions at home, and there's more people watching at home than there is in the arena. So you got to play to the audience at home.
Especially in being WWE from where you guys are they more focused on you playing to that camera than the live crowd at a Raw?
Yes, especially for Raw TV's pay-per-view. Those because those are the ones that's going to buy tickets for a live event. Yeah, so I look at from my experience, I look at Raw and SmackDown as commercials because they want to sell those seats at the live events, the events that's non-televised.
So obviously we just finished up with WrestleMania season. Did any great WrestleMania memories? I mean, you guys didn't have that big match. I mean, you were backstage.
Yeah, we're backstage. Yeah, we
for 23, I believe.
Yeah, we did a segment with was it Ron Simmons, the Divas, the Soul brother. What's his name again? Jive Soul. He sung Jive Soul, bro.
Oh, I know who you talk. Oh, why am I like?
Yeah, I know why it escapes my head right now.
It's escaping mine too.
Slick. Was it Slick?
Slick.
Yeah, Slick. Yeah. That was great. Teddy Long was in it too.
Teddy Long
was in it. Yeah. And then I did a few battle royals, but never had that match. That mania, that moment. I was never. What's it? You wanted to be how they say in WWE, you want to be part of the Immortals.
Yeah,
the showcase of the Immortals. You want to be more.
It's still probably pretty crazy though. Even a few battle royals to sit around and just.
It's not the same. It's not the same. Yeah, I'm not gonna give myself an excuse like I got to be able to perform. No, it's not the same.
Not to get that one-on-one match. So what were some of the big ideas you had in mind for your singles run after? Because you and Shad had a match at Extreme Rules that I thought was like, all right, I can definitely get behind this. That was a brutal match. I thought, what were some of the ideas you were hoping?
So I'm gonna give you one idea that I had. One idea that I pitched to Vince McMahon himself was a Muppet idea. I don't know are you familiar with Big Mouth on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, do you know who what's his name? The character's name, the Hormone Monster.
Oh yeah.
So before the Hormone Monster, I had a character called Self, and he was going to be similar to the Hormone Monster, where only I and the WWE Universe could see and hear him. So let's say me and you were having a conversation. My Muppet that looks exactly like me will be over there. You can't see him, but I could hear him, and the WWE audience could hear him. And he'd be like, "Man, when he hung up with this podcast, let's go and meet some chicks and see what's going on Tinder." Something like that, crazy.
Yeah, something crazy like that.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. I like that. Especially if you say meet some chicks on Tinder. He's talking my language. So, obviously you're here at APW tonight. Is this just your first time?
This is my first time at APW. I hope it's not my last. I'm going to have some fun out here, make a name for myself, and make sure I leave APW not the same.
So, obviously you have used different spellings of the Cryme Tyme, and you've got the JTG name. How did you swing that?
The JTG thing, I have no idea.
Because so many guys,
they have to change their name.
They have to change their name on the indies or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I don't know how I pulled that off, but I saw it in my contract that I was able to. I didn't ask for that. It was I just, I was just able to pull that off, and it worked out for me.
Yeah, because I was like, he's using JTG. I'm like, that's awesome.
I know, right?
I mean, that's like Hulk Hogan status.
It is Hulk Hogan status. I'm glad Vince McMahon saw saw it in me.
Saw the potential. So, where are some other big indies you've been Obviously, you said you're in Puerto Rico. Where are some other
Dominican Republic.
Yeah,
I work with Fighting Evolution Wrestling, FEW. They are based out of Miami. Who else have I worked for? I'm going to be doing a show with Rikishi at the end of the month, April 29th. And just
is that Knox Pro or whatever?
Yeah, Knox Pro. Yeah. And I can I know that who I'm working with, but I can't think of the name right off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're out here grinding away, doing this.
Acting, doing the wrestling, working on a few other projects. You know that I'm gonna
get a third book in there, maybe.
Oh, we'll see. I'm waiting for that third run. We'll see. Get that third run, and
because the books that was it just so much insight. Because like I said, I'm a fan of the in-ring, but I love the backstage stuff too, and hearing the different.
And then the thing that I had to be very different with it was that I got straight to the point. A lot of books, autobiographies, they like to drag on and tell them where it all started. I get it, but I just wanted to give the fans what they really wanted.
Yeah, because I like all that backstage, especially because that's such a major company.
Everybody wants to know what goes on backstage, and I try not to ruffle too many feathers. Yeah.
Did you get any after the book came out? Did you get any boys from the company that were still with the company like, hey, any heat with them after, or was
not really heat, but like they act like, was that me you was talking about? And I was like, nah, that was you. Oh, but if the shoe fits, wear it.
All right, I know you got to get ready here for your match here shortly.
Before we go, I want to give a shout out to my fans on the gram. Put this on story mode. Hold on.
Yeah, get in the story mode.
Come on, let's get this. Come on.
There we go.
What's going on here? Here we go.
All right,
yeah. We are Rockin', what is it?
Rockin' Wrestling.
Rockin' Wrestling Podcast. We out here. Cheer.
Yeah. JTG, I appreciate the time, man, coming on here. And,
no problem.
And I enjoyed the story, enjoyed the time, man. Very personable, man. And I look forward to seeing you here tonight.
Oh, yeah, definitely going to get it popping tonight and have some fun.
So, thanks, man.
Let's do it. Thank you. All right.
All right, I want to thank JTG for joining me this week on the Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Super, super cool dude. Was glad to sit down with him last weekend and discuss a little bit about his career, what he's got going on right now. Super, super fun, easygoing guy. It was a privilege to sit down with him. Hope you guys really enjoyed that interview. Hope to have JTG on again. Would love to talk a little bit more about his Cryme Tyme days and what he's got going on now. But because Cryme Tyme has hilarious moments, definitely go check them out on the WWE Network. Their vignettes, even their entrance music is a crack up with the white gate saying, yo, 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 pop a 40 and check your rollies. It's Cryme Tyme. So definitely go check all his stuff out. He's a tremendous, tremendous dude, tremendous pro wrestler, and it was a privilege to sit down with him. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I said here on the back half, I would discuss a little bit about the Superstar shakeup that happened this past week on WWE television. Once again, we're going to remind you to follow on all the social medias, the Twitter, Nick's R&W Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Facebook, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast, as well as Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. Go on YouTube, the Rock and Wrestling Podcast will be up there. Subscribe on iTunes, go listen on SoundCloud. Many ways to listen and check out everything going on in the Rock and Wrestling Podcast world. But here for the last few minutes, I want to kind of wrap it up and talk about the Superstar shakeup that happened this past week on WWE television. Superstar shakeup is essentially what you could say. It's not a draft like they've had with brand extensions before, where, one person heads up one roster, another person heads up the other roster, and they draft their superstars. With the Superstar shakeup, it's kind of like trades and free agency in the NFL, where guys will switch brands. And the reason they do this is because the main thing is guys get stale. It's not the old days in professional wrestling, even when I was growing up, where if one guy became stale or his contract was up, he would leave WWE or he would leave the territory that he was at and could go somewhere else. Specifically, when I was growing up, you had the opportunity. Guys would show up. Maybe they'd show up on Monday Night Raw with WWE, or they could show up on Monday Nitro with WCW or even ECW. So you had places to go and work outside the WWE. Well, WWE is the major game in town now. So with the brand extension, where you have Raw and you have SmackDown Live, they do a superstar shakeup. And I think it's brilliant that they do it right here after WrestleMania, because it's reset time. Boom, get ready for the next year. Have new guys come to different brands, shake things up, get different matchups, and everything like that. So I thought, last year the Superstar Shakeup was very one-sided. Raw got all the tremendous talent. Raw was the better show over the last year over SmackDown. But I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think they really put an emphasis that SmackDown gets some solid talent, and they really, really did get solid talent. Both Raw and SmackDown I felt made good, but SmackDown made out just a little bit better. Also, I want to remind a big shout out to Bruce Pritchard that JTG gave you, one of my favorite podcasts. Go check that show out right now, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Something else to wrestle with on the WWE Network. I'm excited for that. Conrad, Bruce, you guys rock. So let's get into first. I'll start with Raw since it's first, and then I'll go SmackDown, and we'll go from there. So Raw got Jinder Mahal. Jinder came over as the U.S. champion. Obviously, last year he was one of the guys that benefited from the Superstar Shakeup because he went from Raw to SmackDown, and he ended up having that big WWE reign. He's been more of a main event talent. He brought the U.S. title over. Was a little crazy because he wrestled Jeff Hardy on Monday, and Jeff Hardy won the U.S. title, which that kind of telegraphed that, okay, the U.S. title is going to go to SmackDown. Jeff's going to go to SmackDown. Seth Rollins and the Intercontinental title are going to stay on Monday Night Raw. But Jinder is interesting because he's kind of a middle-of-the-road guy. I'm not real big on Jinder. I don't think, they've done him a great service in that it just was a hot shot. It wasn't a slow build and let's try to build this guy up. It was just, hey, 1 minute you're an enhancement talent, the next you're WWE champion. So I haven't been big on him. I'm not, his work is getting better in promos, but I'm still not really sold on him. So there, Raw got the Riot Squad, and then I'll talk about that on SmackDown. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville went over there. You got basically a flip-flop of talent. Riot Squad for Absolution. I'm not big on either one of these factions. I think they should just be individual talent. Ruby Riot's a good talent. Sonya's going to have talent. Mandy Rose is going to have some talent. I think they're better off certain singles competitors, but not much there for me. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, they come over to Raw. They did the whole kind of angle where Stephanie wanted to sign these guys over Kurt. It's going to be interesting to see what Kevin and Sami do on the Raw brand. They had such a long angle on SmackDown with the Shane McMahon and the Daniel Bryan thing. So I hope they don't try to recreate that with Kurt Angle, because we've seen Kevin and Sami go against the authority figure on the show. Let them do something different. I think they'd be, really would fit nice maybe in the Intercontinental title. You could get a lot of work with Finn Balor, and you could get some work with Seth Rollins, and now Bobby Roode being over there on Raw as well. I think you could get some good work in there. Zack Ryder was announced on Twitter. I think this is just a change for change's sake. Zack hasn't been doing much, so nothing there. Breezango came over, Fandango and Tyler Breeze. They actually picked up an upset over the Bar, which was kind of crazy. But they could get a spotlight on Raw. They have kind of a unique character and unique position, so who knows. Natalya was one. That was kind of a shocker, but looks like her first feud's going to be with Ronda Rousey, and I think that that's a smart move since they train together. She's a vet, and she could get a great match out of Ronda, so that's a smart move. I like that. I think it'll be interesting to see where the story goes, but I think they'll have a solid match when they get to that point. Mojo came over. Once again, change for change's sake. Don't see much there. These two guys, Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, going to be interesting there because I thought Drew had more potential by himself, but Dolph and Drew together really remind me of a Diesel and Shawn Michaels. Dolph being the Shawn, Drew being the Diesel. It could work out, but I hope that they give Drew McIntyre the respect and the rightful handling of him this time, because he's a really, really solid talent. He left WWE. He went and made a name for himself. He's built like a brick shit house now, man. Dude, his quads are the size of fucking trees. So it's going to be interesting to see. I really hope they give him a push. I thought he would fit better on SmackDown because he would be a definite main event guy there. Now that we know who's on SmackDown, there are some programs he could definitely work. But I think there's a good shot there. Baron Corbin, going to be interesting there. I've been reading the reports on a lot of the dirt sheets that Vince is pretty high on him, and he was getting a main event push on SmackDown. So before they kind of did everything with him losing the Money in the Bank briefcase and everything along those lines. So I think you'll see Corbin get a shot. I think he could ultimately, they may try to put him in a program with Roman Reigns and everything that goes with that. So we'll see how that plays out. Mike Kanellis, once again, he didn't do much on SmackDown to begin with. Hopefully they'll get him going and do something. Ascension, change for change sake. Chad Gable, maybe they're going to give him a little singles run. And then finally, the mystery guy that was on Monday Night Raw was Bobby Roode. I think Bobby Roode definitely needed to change for the fact if he was getting lost on SmackDown. Hopefully they have something for him on Raw. I think Bobby Roode works better as a heel. But with that entrance music and that entrance, it's entertaining and people cheer it. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think if you can get him as a heel, that's awesome. All right, so Raw got, around, what is that? If you count the Riot Squad, let's count the manager. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 new wrestlers Raw got, essentially. That's huge. It almost felt like they depleted SmackDown. I was a little worried going into Tuesday night that they were going to do the same thing. But the first person we knew going to SmackDown was The Miz. They announced that on Raw on Monday. So we know we're going to get our Daniel Bryan and Miz feud. I think that's something we'll see down the line at a bigger pay-per-view like SummerSlam. But that's huge. I think that's going to be really, really big time. Finally going to get a payoff to that feud. But SmackDown, to me, started slow. But then, man, they got some solid talent. And if it's booked right, SmackDown is going to kill it in this next year. Jeff Hardy came over with the U.S. title. I think we kind of all expected that. So that's huge. I think Jeff fits better on SmackDown. You've got Matt and Bray doing the broken thing. I think Jeff is seen as more as a single star and can be pushed as that. Vince always saw him as the star originally. He's a former world champion in the WWE. So I think Jeff's going to really pan out well there. Absolution, I felt was just a flip-flop of stables between the Riot Squad and them. Not much there. The one that really shocked me was when Samoa Joe showed up, because Samoa Joe and SmackDown, that's awesome. You got some dream potential matchups in the WWE. Joe and Styles had some classics in TNA. Now you can get them in WWE. Joe and Bryan, Joe and Nakamura. The list is endless. But he's been coming out the last 2 weeks and just verbally destroying Roman Reigns. So I'm not sure exactly why Joe has moved to SmackDown. But he's a main event player right from the get-go. I mean, he should be going after AJ Styles like that, or whoever the WWE champion is going to be. Joe should be going after him, and hot really soon. Then they got some NXT call-ups. They got Sanity. A lot of people upset that Nikki Cross isn't coming with them, but I think it's going to be great. They can be baby faces. They can be heels. Killian Dane is a beast. I'm happy for Eric Young because he's worked so hard and he was good, being in TNA for so long. Glad to see that he's going to be on the main roster now. So glad with that. Big Cass showed up. Looks like they're going to be doing something with him and Daniel Bryan. Not sure why Cass hates Daniel Bryan right from the get-go, but hopefully maybe Cass is aligned with The Miz, and there's something along those lines. So that's a good pickup. Asuka coming over to SmackDown. Not much to say, except that's a win. Definitely win. I think her and the Iconics, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, will be huge. I think Asuka trying to chase Carmella for the title will be good. So there's going to be a lot of good work. Naomi and Becky Lynch she's never worked with. So there's going to be some good stuff. Gallows and Anderson coming over. That's huge. Big time. I think they really needed it. They're prime players on SmackDown. They can get in there, mix it up with the Usos and the New Day. So I'm in the Bludgeon Brothers. That's going to be good. So, the Bar, Cesaro, and Sheamus came over. Great. SmackDown's tag division is loaded between the Bar, the Club, Usos, New Day, Bludgeon Brothers, Sanity, if you count them, man. It's stacked compared to Raw, where it's really the Authors of Pain, and it looks like Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt. But love that. Only thing I don't like is it kind of telegraphs the outcome for the Greatest Royal Rumble, which is a week from Friday, that the vacant Raw tag team titles is supposed to be the Bar against Hardy and Bray Wyatt. Kind of means Bray Wyatt and Hardy are going to win since the Bar is going to be on SmackDown. R-Truth, he hasn't been really on TV, just kind of seems like he's there for comedic purposes. And then Andre Cien Almas and Selena Vega are coming. That's huge. The only thing I was really disappointed is that SmackDown didn't get Finn Balor. I thought Finn really needed it. If you put him on this roster, it's loaded, and he becomes a main event talent right away. But I'm okay with it. I think SmackDown made out like gangbusters on this one. So really, really excited about the coming weeks here on WWE television, especially with all the shakeup, all the moves now. It's over. So we're going to kind of see what's going to play out, who's going to be your main event players. We're past WrestleMania, and we're moving on now. We're ready to go, and the next I would say the next big pay-per-view is Money in the Bank here in June. There's an NXT TakeOver the night before that goes with it. So that's the big one. SummerSlam in the summer. Survivor Series is going to be in LA. I'm going to be there for both the TakeOver and the Survivor Series pay-per-view. And then before you know it, it'll be WrestleMania season again. But that's just the way the vicious cycle goes in pro wrestling. But really excited. Thought the Superstar shakeup worked out much better this year for both brands. It felt much more equal than it had the previous year. I'm real excited to see what plays out. What are some of the feuds? What are some of the dream matches that we could potentially get? But it's going to be good in the very, very good, I think, in the coming weeks. So real excited about that. But in the meantime, I said that I had a big announcement on a big guest for next week's episode. Next week is going to be the Patriot, Del Wilkes. I have now have the capability to do phone interviews. I have some software that's going to allow me. Del's going to be the first phone interview. The Patriot, if you remember him, he was in WCW from 1990, I think about 1992, 93-ish. To about 1995, 1997. Then he went to the WWE and had some, when I first got into wrestling, one of the characters I was drawn to was the Patriot. His feud he had with Bret Hart, working with him. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff in his career, but it's going to be awesome to see, awesome to talk to Del. This is the first non-in-person interview I'm doing for the podcast. Something a little bit different I want to try so that I can get some bigger and more well-known guests, some more guests that we can get some reach out to. So I'm going to try it with a phone interview. Going to speak with the Patriot, Del Wilkes, tomorrow morning. We're going to do it over the phone. I'm going to record it. I'm going to get it all down. I think the audio will come out real bitchin' for everybody to hear. But you're not going to hear the last of me this week. Tomorrow, bonus episode. Carl Fredericks, sat down with him at APW right after I sat down with JTG. He's a phenomenal young talent. He's actually had some tryouts with WWE. He's actually had some on-screen as a kind of extra work for WWE. We talk all about that. We talk all about him. He's a fantastic human being, funny guy. Really looking forward to you guys hearing that interview. So I figured extra bonus episode for all the support this week. So I got 2 solid interviews and guests for you to hear, as JTG was today. Once again, I want to thank JTG for coming on. He was phenomenal. And then we've got Carl Fredericks tomorrow. Once again, I want to thank everybody for the support. Make sure that you go follow on social media at Nick's R&W Podcast is the Twitter handle. Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. Rock and Wrestling Podcast on Instagram. Go find Rock and Wrestling Podcast on YouTube. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/Rock and Wrestling Podcast store. It's over there. Help a brother out. Get a t-shirt, long sleeve t-shirt. Get yourself a tank top. Summer's coming out. Got to have the guns out for the ladies. All of that stuff. and they're all unisex. So even for you lady listeners out there, you can get yourself the same shirt and tank top as the fellas. So I will see you guys tomorrow. You'll hear my beautiful, sexy voice for a bonus episode, a second episode this week with Carl Fredericks, the Big Effing Deal. Thanks again, once again, to JTG. And the next week, I'll have one episode with the Patriot Del Wilkes. Make sure you share this, follow on social media, go buy a t-shirt. Thanks, and I will see and hear you guys tomorrow. Peace.